Hi, I'm Mrs. Barrett, and welcome to Grade 5 ABRSM Chromatic Scales video. To practice these 3 chromatic scales, you need to show attention to the starting and ending notes of each scale, which will be G, A, and B flat. Each of the 3 scales is going to be a 2-octave chromatic scale. When you're playing separate bows, you don't have to think about bowing, but when you add the slurs, there are going to be groups of 4 notes in every slur. This is important to think about even when you're playing the separate notes, because you can practice the scale in groups so that you already know which fingers are going to be part of each slur. I'll demonstrate this with the G chromatic scale. First group of 4. Second. Third. Fourth. Fifth. Sixth. And this last note is actually the start of my new group. When you're playing the scale in the exam, you will not use any pauses if you're playing the separate notes. This is just a good way of starting to organize yourself when you're practicing the chromatic scales. In fact, I would recommend dividing the scale into groups of 4 and adding those groups each day. This helps your fingers to develop the proper position as you're changing notes, because playing scales in semitones can be incredibly difficult for our ears. It's easy to make the semitones too small. And then you can end up adding extra notes in between when you don't mean to. So for me, I like to group the groups of 4 and practice those forwards and backwards as my first technique for learning the chromatic scale. If you think about it, you're practicing it in 2 ways, which is going to help you when you do the groups that are descending. When lifting the finger between the sliding finger notes, you want to use a little bit of a bright action, almost like you're making a spring in your finger. Don't also do that in the bow, because then you'll get jumps in the slurs like this. So it's only for the left hand to do the active motion. The bow is going to stay quite legato and détaché. And you're going to listen for each note, which is a natural note, like the A here, so that you can hear that you've made it to the right pitch. Also, the semitones between strings, so that you know that you've arrived to the new string without adding any extra pitches on the lower string. So those are the general tips for starting to learn the chromatic scales. Now I'll make the specific practice videos for each scale.